You ain't never seen a sunset out west. The cactus or a paintbrush bloom in the springtime.
I am Wendell with Our Green God, and we're here in Texas, and we are going to plant a fruit tree. We are going to plant the fruit tree using the Ellen White method, what's known as the Ellen White method. She was a lady that lived over 100 years ago in Michigan in the Midwest, and in her old age when her husband died, she'd actually ended up moving to Australia, and she had bought a piece of land that was near the ocean, and the soil was very, very, very poor for growing any fruits or vegetables. So she prayed to God, and in the dream and in the night, God actually came and showed her how to grow very vibrant and thriving, healthy fruit trees. Seen people use it. I don't know all the science behind it, but I do know that it was a revelation from God himself, who's the creator of all things and grows all the fruit and vegetables from the soil of the earth. And I do also know that it works. And it's a very, very basic, simple idea. When you plant a fruit tree, you want the soil to be very vibrant and healthy and alive. Soil has 4 basic elements. It has sand, clay, silt, and the humus, which is the organic matter of it. And sand, silt, and clay are just varying degrees of the particle size. So we are going to dig the hole, and we are going to plant a fruit tree, and I will show you the method. Maybe not exactly to the letter of how Ellen White did it, but it's the same principle, and it will work, and you will be successful if you add organic material and the nutrients and trace elements. Okay, so I picked a location for the fruit tree. This is a peach tree. I'm going to plant this. When you plant your tree, you want to make sure you do research on the specific tree. Some fruit trees like acidic soil, some fruit trees like alkaline soil. The way that the soil drains, the fruit tree does not like the soil that's just kind of stuck in water, so there needs to be good drainage. We're going to make a good soil and put it in. I'm considering the soil, I'm considering the elevation, I'm considering the drainage, I'm considering the sun and the shade, wind. I'm here in Texas, which gets a lot of sunlight, so I have some big trees over here. The sun comes up in the east right about here, and it moves in this direction. This particular type of fruit tree, this peach, does like full sun. So not a lot of fruit trees do like full sun, but this tree can handle just being in the sun like all the time. I'm gonna put it right here. So now we'll dig our hole. If you have an excavator or a backhoe or tractor, this will be a cinch, but me, I'm gonna do it the old-fashioned way. I'm gonna do it by hand. Your soil is definitely gonna be different than this, very likely. I've dug many holes in the desert, like in Nevada and in Utah, and you're gonna probably struggle with rocks. It's gonna be very sandy. The idea of this method is that it does require quite a bit of work, and the Bible says that if you don't work, you don't deserve to eat. So work is food. Just as work is money, work is food. So to get good fruit and to have good things, you gotta work it. But with this method, you can have a lot of fruit and you can have it very fast. Okay, so now I dug the hole out. It's 3 feet deep. It's 3 feet wide on both sides. So it's 3 foot square and 3 foot deep. So it's 1 cubic yard. And 1 cubic yard is about the same dimension and size as a backyard home composter. You know that the hole's probably deep enough when either you hit water, it's very moist here, it's the rain season, or you have a very difficult time climbing out of it. When you have a hard time climbing out of it, it's probably deep enough. And I also did make it square, and the reason is once you get your fruit tree planted here, when it's in the pot, it just goes around and around and around the pot. And instead of going around in a round hole and going around and around, it'll actually hit a corner and challenge it to start growing in a different direction. So it'll grow out or down into the hole and out. So you want it to go down and out to have a good root system. My property is actually right here built into the Sam Houston National Forest. So this area was forested for hundreds of years. I did pull all the roots out of it. We're gonna build this system into 3 layers, so 12 inches each. 12 inches, 24, and 36, putting the fruit tree, the peach tree right in the middle. If you have good topsoil, you can use that, but you want to amend it with compost and with organic materials and with humus. So we're going to build this into 3 levels, but you also want to add some trace elements and minerals. It's going to need phosphate. A good rock phosphate or a bone meal would work. It's going to need nitrogen. This will actually go on the top layer. Worm castings would work good for that. Coffee grounds full of nitrogen. A good healthy compost has a lot of nitrogen. And also blood meal has good nitrogen in it, or cottonseed meal has good nitrogen content. You also want a lime, which has calcium, and it also helps to make the soil a little bit more alkaline, take away some of the acidity of the soil. Ellen White, she did live rather close to the ocean, is my understanding, so she had access to go down to the sea and get seawater and get kelp. Kelp is very, very, very nutritious for the soil, for the plants, to like a fertilizer, plant food. So kelp from the sea would be a very good thing to put in here. Ellen White also did use seawater. It doesn't take a lot, but seawater has pretty much every mineral under the sun can be found in seawater, even gold. It has all the trace minerals and all the essential minerals that your tree will need to really, really thrive. We got our hole dug, so now we want to, at the very bottom, we want to create an air pocket at the very bottom of this hole to start with. After you dig your hole, you want to put an air pocket. Now, a lot of gardeners are recommending to use some kind of like PVC pipe that has like holes in it, or even taking a planting pot that's made out of plastic and sticking it upside down and then starting your hole that way to have an air pocket. But naturally, underneath the ground, you have trees, you have roots, the roots will die. And so there's always, even like moles and gophers and things will be digging underneath the soil, and earthworms will be causing holes so that the soil could be aerated. I wouldn't want to use anything that's not organic, that wouldn't compost or decay or rot, which this won't. So I used sticks and branches. So I want to mimic what the forest does. I just want to use some of the branches and sticks that I took out of this area, and I just want to throw them in there at the bottom. I want to keep this as natural as possible. I don't want any chemicals. I don't want any plastics. Back in your hole, if you're pulling out roots, those can be used at the bottom of the hole for creating an air pocket. I will just throw a piece of cardboard over the top of it just to prevent the soil from collapsing over the very top of it. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to take a portion of the dirt, the topsoil that we took out of the hole. We put it along the sides, and I want to take a portion of that, maybe a fourth or a fifth of that, and we want to amend it and recreate it to be really super organic, full of lively organic humus and material. If you don't have a lot of the ingredients that a lot of these videos are suggesting, you can improvise. You can find things around you that are organic that you can put into the hole, things that have composted or things that will compost. You just want to add a lot of nutrition and a lot of organic mass and material to your hole. I'm going to use peat moss, I'm going to use manure, I'm going to use topsoil, and also I have some leaf mold that's from the forest. I live in the forest, so I just had to drive a couple blocks and go in the forest. It took me about 3 minutes to get all this leaf mold. But in the forest, there's birds, there's animals, there's droppings, and they poop on the forest ground. And then underneath the leaves, you'll have insects, you'll have worms, you'll have bacteria, and it's all part of the forest, and it's regenerating itself and recycling itself, and it will be like moldy and moist. It'll be almost composted. If it looks like a leaf, it's a leaf. If it looks like something that you can't recognize, it's composted. So it should smell foresty and organic, and it should smell a little bit moldy. When you go into the forest, be careful not to bring anything back that you don't want. I went out to a spot where there was like 3 or 4 pine trees above me in the forest. This is very good leaf mold, as you can maybe see here. Very good leaf mold. Has that really organic, fresh, foresty smell. Pine is very, very acidic. Pine trees love acidic soil, and the pine needles are acidic. So if you're growing something acidic, using pine needles in the compost, the topsoil, is a very good way of making your soil more acidic. So just be careful with that. Some things like acidic soil, and some things are very sensitive to the pH level and don't like low pH levels. But this is the leaf mold. I'm gonna just add this into the pile that I'm working here. So this is my leaf mold from the forest. I'm gonna use this area right here, just kind of mix it up with my shovel and put it into the lower third of this hole. This is my topsoil. I don't have good topsoil here, so I had to buy somebody's who's got some pretty good topsoil. I'm gonna use the whole bag. I'm gonna use a bag and a half for each hole, so I'm gonna use the same amount on the top third of the hole as well. So I won't use all that. I got the humus and the manure here. I'm gonna put my portion of that in there. The peat moss is good because it really helps the soil to maintain its porous state, where it can absorb the correct amount of water. So this is really good for soil retention. So I'm gonna put that in my pile. Oh, it just smells so good. It smells like wood in the forest. And so you'll have all this. You'll be mixing this up. In the Philippines, there's a popular drink. It's an ice drink with ice cream and fruits and ice. It's called halo-halo. And in the language of the Philippines, in Tagalog, it just simply means mix, 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 mix. Halo-halo. That's what you do with the soil, with all the amendments and all the fertilizers. You mix them together. The leaf compost, the peat moss, everything. Mix, mix. And so now we're going to put all of our trace elements and all of our minerals and electrolytes in here. Going to need phosphorus, going to need calcium, and you're going to need trace minerals, and seawater is very good for that. Phosphate and phosphorus, pretty much the same word, it just has to do with the different binding capacity. Some people will use a rock phosphate, but you'll see a number on these plant fertilizers. This one says 217-0. This is a bone meal. This bone meal, the 2, the 17, the 0, you see 3 numbers. The first number, 2, that's nitrogen. The second number, 17, that's the phosphorus. And then the 0, that's the potassium. So it's going to be nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. That's what the 3 numbers mean. So this is bone meal. There's about a cup. It's a 217-0 mix. So I'm going to use about a cup of that bone meal. That's the phosphorus. So you can use a rock phosphate or a bone meal. Those are very high in phosphorus. And now you want to add some calcium to your amendment. I got this here. This is lime. Lime is very high in calcium. Obviously, Ellen White probably couldn't just go down to the hardware store, the farm store, or garden store, and buy these elements. So you're just going to have to find things in nature that have these electrolytes in them. Calcium is usually found like in eggshells. If you have a lot of eggshells, you crush them up. That'll give you a high calcium content. Calcium, lime, it'll change your soil from more acidic to more alkaline. I'm gonna add about 2 cups, and you may want to change this. That's a lot more than 2 cups. I'm gonna put that in there. Put some in the hole. This could make your soil pretty alkaline, so just be careful. Depending on blueberries, love acidic soil, so don't do this with blueberries. And if you're by the ocean, you can go down and get some kelp. You can put some kelp in the bottom of this hole, right on top of your burlap or your cardboard that's holding in that air pocket. You can go to the garden store or the farm store and get kelp meal, which is really good for the soil amendment, but they do suggest to use just a little bit, maybe just a half a cup of that. You use too much and it could actually stunt the growth of the tree. It actually can do more harm than good. So I'm not going to use any. I couldn't find any. I didn't want to deal with it. I'm not going to go to the ocean and get any sea kelp right now. And then last but not least, to our lower third of our soil amendment, we're going to use seawater. This here container is about a half a gallon. You don't have to be by the ocean and go to the ocean. You can go to the grocery store and for a very, very inexpensive cost. You can buy sea salt, and the sea salt will have all the trace elements that the entire ocean has. It'll even have some gold in it and things like that. But this is a half a gallon. For a half a gallon, it takes about a quarter cup of sea salt. The rule of thumb is if you have a gallon of water and you put, let's say, a bunch of sea salt in there, the water will only absorb and saturate to a certain level, and then it'll just leave crystals in there. So, but it's about a half a cup of sea salt per gallon. And I'm gonna put pretty much just about like a fourth of a gallon here, and on my top one, I'm gonna put the other fourth a gallon. So it'd take about a half a gallon to do one hole using the Ellen White method. So I'm just gonna put about half of this. It's a quart. So let's see, it's about half of a gallon, about a fourth of a gallon, a quart. That's about half of it. I'll use the other half on the other part. Okay, so we want to give this a good mixing. Get down in there, really mix it up. And we'll mix it as good as we can. And then we'll throw it back into our hole, filling up the first third. Okay, you wanna pack this layer down pretty good. You wanna get it nice and compacted, firm. And do remember, underneath all this compaction and firmness, you still have your air pocket. This is our first layer. Our bottom third of the hole with our air pocket on the very bottom. A lot easier to climb out of the hole now. And then now, before we build the second layer, the second third of this hole, we want to put a layer of rock. I don't know the science behind it. I don't know how electricity really works, but I do know, just like your body, your heart beats and it uses electricity. And so it moves potassium and calcium in and out of the cell channels, and it creates an electrical pathway. Trees use the same mechanism to sustain life. So these trees do need an electrical current. They need water, they need sunlight, they need a lot of things. They use electricity to metabolize and to do the things that they do and to create the fruit. They do use electricity. So rocks are a very vital part of that process. And you may live in an area where you're digging one of these holes and you're using this method and planting a tree like this, and as you dug the hole, you probably had a lot of rocks. But if you're pulling out rocks out of your hole, then you can save those maybe in a bucket and put those in the layer in the middle of the hole. But me, I live in an area where a lot of the rivers here don't really have rocks. I don't really have access to a lot of rocks. So I actually did go and buy rocks. You can get a bag of rocks for $5 at Home Depot. When I was a kid, my mom used to garden, and I used to help her rototill and garden, and we'd pull the rocks out and throw them out. But the rocks do serve a purpose. So I'm gonna scatter rocks at the top of the last layer and at the bottom of this next second layer. So this will really help your tree grow properly. Okay, now this is going to be the easiest part. The middle part of the hole, the second third, the very middle, it's pretty much just topsoil. There's really nothing special about it. If you have really good topsoil, like where you live, you could just put the topsoil back. that you dug out from your hole. But I don't really have that really good topsoil, like maybe like in Walla Walla, Washington, or maybe in the Sacramento Valley of California. But I'm just going to take maybe about half of the topsoil that I did take out, if you want to call it topsoil, and just add maybe another half of the manure to it. I'll put the rest of my manure in there, and I'm going to put the rest of my topsoil that I bought in there. A little bit of peat moss, just probably a little bit of that. You can also use leaf mold at this stage too. Just want organic material in there. Want it more like topsoil. Don't really worry about the nutrients and electrolytes and trace minerals. You don't need any seawater or kelp in this one. So if you take a measuring tape, you'll see that this should be somewhere around 12 inches or so. So now we just need to add the last layer. So it's pretty much just like the first layer, with just a couple extra things. And one of the biggest things that you want to add in there is obviously going to be nitrogen, because the nitrogen is like plant food. When the roots start to get established, you want to give that plant, that tree, some nitrogen. It's like having donuts. You can go out and frame and roof a house. Having nitrogen. Nitrogen is how we blast off and go to the moon and stuff like that. So you want nitrogen for fuel for the plant. The top third of the hole, the last part, is going to be just like the first one. Not technically topsoil. It's not very good soil at all. So I've got to amend it and make it that way. So I'm gonna do my awesome topsoil here. A bag of that. This humus. My manure. I want a bag of that. Do a little bit of my peat moss, which is good for us. Water retention. You want to keep your soil moist and retain your moisture. Okay, you got the bone meal, which is phosphorus. So do about a cup of that, just like the bottle. Okay, you want to do the lime. So a couple cups of that. That's got calcium that'll make the soil a little bit more alkaline. And then you got your quart of seawater, which I made from just regular sea salt. So probably about 1/8 of a cup of sea salt right there. All right, now a couple extra things you want to add. You want nitrogen. A lot of gardeners will recommend that you use cottonseed oil, which is high in nitrogen. If you have coffee grounds, you can add them in at this point. I'm going to use a blood mill. And it's a 1400. So the 14, the first number, is nitrogen. The blood mill looks almost just like coffee grounds. So I'm going to add a couple cups of blood mill, which is your nitrogen. You got coffee grounds, you can put them right here. And then I'm also going to add vermicomposting earth castings in here. So this is actually the compost worms will actually eat the organic material, and then out the other end they will poop, and they're called castings, and they're very, very rich. This vermicomposting earth castings, the harvest of the vermicomposting, is what gardeners call gardener's gold. So I'm going to put this on the top part of the soil amendment. So I got like a whole bag. I'm doing 4 holes, so I'll put about 1/4 of that in. This is good stuff. This is like compost on steroids. This is like gold. Like, it's worth its weight in gold. So one caveat about using the worm castings, that's gardener's gold. And if you just put the worm castings on top and it's exposed to the elements and to the sun, it'll dry out and become worthless. So if you do use the worm castings, make sure you use it on the top layer, and you put it like in the soil or underneath the mulch so it doesn't dry out. Mix all this. And these actually are my coffee grounds, so I'm just gonna put those in now. And even if you have the filters, most filters are compostable and organic. If you have the plastic kinds, I wouldn't be putting anything like that in here. If you don't drink coffee, if you don't have access to coffee grounds, you can go to your local coffee shop, maybe like a Starbucks, and ask them if they usually take all their coffee grounds into bags and they throw it in the dumpster and they throw it away. So if you go there, they usually have gardeners that will come and actually ask. Just continue on. Now that I've got my hole filled in with topsoil and dirt, it's actually quite difficult to tell where exactly my hole was. But I put some rocks here to mark the border of it here, and I got my plant here, so I've marked it. So in the very middle is where your plant's gonna go. Okay. Now what Ellen White did recommend was using a stone to place your potted fruit tree right on top of. It sits right on top of a stone, so the stone acts as an anchor, and then the roots will grow down and around it and then go down into all that nutritious soil and start to establish roots. This stone is from the North Fork River in Montana. This stone is from the Toutle River in Washington State, but I'm not going to use one of my special rocks that I want to be at the surface, that I want to watch and be a pretty part of my garden. I'm just going to use some stone that I actually found when I was digging up all the roots from this area. So this is a natural stone in this area. You can go to the store and buy stones, but they can be quite expensive. You might live in an area near a lake or a river or in the mountains where there's stones everywhere, very close to your home. So I'm going to put a stone here. You can see this is grafted. You can see where they cut and they grafted this and then cut it. So you want that knuckle, that notch where the graft was, sticking up above the soil. So pull this out and get all that good stuff. Maybe get the roots. They kind of like rotate around and around in the pot. Kind of maybe get those roots start growing outward. Encourage them. Put it right on top of my rock. The rock is always going to be stable. It's going to be your source of security, just like the rock Messiah. The sun comes up over here and it moves across the sky there. So I want the leaves kind of facing this area here. And as I look at it, there's a lot of leaves here. A branch will grow out this way. Maybe I want that branch to grow out more towards the corner of my fence here. A good branch here. This is going to need to be pruned every couple of years. Okay, I think I like how that looks. So there's my knuckle, like where it was grafted and they cut it there. So that's got to be above your soil. And so it is. My soil's about here, my knuckle's there. And also I do have some neighbors that have several peach trees in the neighborhood. So I know that this tree will be able to cross-pollinate with those other peach trees. This likes full sun. Read the label, they usually give you information on it. This will get full sun. It's got good drainage. We orientated it the right way. We put it where we want it. So this is where it's gonna go. This is the fun part. You gotta get your hands in the soil. But once this is established, once the roots grow in, it'll be established, it'll bear fruit, and it'll be quite a blessing. And like the Bible says, once a tree is established, you can't move a tree. One of the things that I'm afraid of with the generation that's coming up, they're not outside, they don't have their hands in the dirt, they don't understand agricultural concepts or concepts about roots and vines and trees and sheep and things like that. And if you're not outside working the soil and getting your hands in the soil, the ground, and doing things like this, many of the parables and the lessons of the Bible will not be understood by people that are out here working the soil and planting trees and growing vegetables and things like that. And if for some reason this gets diseased or it gets dry or it dies for any reason, you can just pull this out and the whole area is established with fertile soil. So you could just put a new one right here. Just start with this process right here. Pull this old one out and just put a new one right here without redigging the hole or adding anything to it. Firmly in place. We have that rock, that anchor underneath it. And then this is my hole with all the soil amendment, the healthy stuff, the organic food plant fertilizer stuff in there. I'm gonna take the extra soil that's here and create like a 3-foot diameter, about the size of a whole round catchment to trap in any rainwater or moisture that comes in here. Well, in all of my excitement of trying to get this tree in and finished, I did forget my second portion of leaf mold to put in the top portion of the soil amendment. So I'm gonna maybe improvise a little bit by pulling some of the soil from the top out and just kind of adding it in that fashion. And now for the easy part, you just give it some water. You don't want to just water at the base of the tree, right where the potted part is. You want to water your whole entire hole, where you put all the soil amendment, the 3-foot by 3-foot hole. So about 3 foot all the way around, you want to water this. We recommend to water it maybe a gallon or two twice a day for the first couple weeks to get it established. The mulch will help keep everything organic. You won't have to use weed killers and chemicals because you can easily pull the weeds out. Definitely make the weeds a lot easier to pull when they do show up, which they will. So the mulch keeps the moisture in, helps prevent weeds from growing, and makes it easier to weed. I think you want to keep this as organic as you possibly can. We don't want the weeds getting the nutrients. We want our tree that's going to give us our fruit to have the nutrients, not the weeds. You want to keep the weeds out. One thing about weeds that we all hate, just like some other things in life, weeds take away the vital nutrients of the soil. It steals what belongs to us. I also have a support here. I have a bamboo that holds the whole entire tree upright so it can grow and get some woody strength. Make sure you water the whole entire hole that you dug, not just right there at the root, not just right at the base of the tree. And use a nice and easy spray nozzle. You don't want to have just the hose coming out and just scattering your soil and your mulch and all that. If you do use worms, I would suggest that you put the worms at the very, very last. I'm just now getting the mulch. So if I were to use worms, I could actually put the worms either on the mulch or just kind of like cover them with just a few inches of mulch and just let them do their thing in the soil. Worms cannot be just exposed to the sun. Okay, I'm gonna move on to my second tree. I have an avocado tree here. I'm gonna plant that next. And I also have a lime and a lemon. I'll plant these 3 today using the same method that Ellen G. White used that was revealed to her by God. And I think next year I'll also add a mango tree and a pomegranate tree. Moving from Washington State to Texas, we have a lot more sun here. The climate's a lot different. It's a lot warmer. Our winters are a lot more milder down here. Able to grow some things that normally wouldn't grow in some other places of the country. So wherever you live, you got to decide what it is that you want to plant, what kind of fruits you want to have. So having land is valuable, and if you have land, utilizing it so that you could be growing things, not just pretty flowers, but also things for produce, that fruits and vegetables, things that you could actually eat and sustain yourself with. Another piece of advice, I would say that if you are going to grow fruits and vegetables, especially fruit trees, think about not just having things that everybody loves like apples and mangoes and peaches, but think about having things that are useful, like lime. If everybody were to grow apples and peaches, nobody would have garlic and ginger and limes and lemons and some of those things. I mean, when I make a pot of soup, I don't just want only just basic things in there like carrots and potatoes. It's also good if a neighbor had garlic or ginger, and those are things that are high value in times of insufficiency, when there's lack and there's times of hardship. Those are things that could have great value. You could take a clove of garlic and exchange it for maybe a basket of tomatoes. So that's the Ellen White method of planting fruit trees. So some of the main concepts of this method is you want to dig a big hole and fill it with as much organic material and plant nutrition as you can. If you have poor soil, you want to add nutrition for the plants. The soil that I had here in my backyard in Texas, I dug 4 holes, that's 4 cubic yards. I did not see one single worm, not one earthworm. That means that the soil is poor. So you want to add organic material. Number 2, one of the secrets is you put an air pocket at the bottom hole. Number 3, one of the secrets is you put a layer somewhere in the middle of your hole, put a layer of rock for electrical current to flow through there. And I think a reason why a lot of plants don't thrive and do well is because it's not using electricity properly for healthy immune system that the tree requires. And another good idea is to, when you put your pot down, to put a rock for an anchor there while it's developing its roots. So this was a lot of work to use the Ellen White method, but this soil was very poor. If you just take just a pot from the garden store and you just dig a very small hole and you stick it in there, this tree may or may not grow. It will stunt the growth. It'll grow very slow, and whatever growth you get from it will not produce the vibrant growth that will produce fruit. We want this tree to bear fruit. We want it to do it quickly, and we want it to do it efficiently. So you have to do your work. You have to do your part. So the hard work is always done up front, like laying a foundation on the house. It's the hardest part. It requires the most attention and work and effort. But once you lay that foundation down, once you do all of this work, you could, over the years, just enjoy the fruits of your labor. You don't put the work in, you don't get the produce out. If you're not improving your land, then you're not living on your land, and the land will not belong to you. The land only belongs to you when you improve the land and you work the land and you produce something from that land. It's a God-given right to actually have your own land, and the land should stay in your family, and that land should be a blessing not only to your family, it's your inheritance, and it should also be a blessing to your community and to your neighbors. And if you have a lot of fruit on your trees, make sure you share with your neighbors. I believe that we live in troubled times. I believe that there are very difficult times ahead of us, uncertain times. And when uncertain times come, you don't want to be scrambling to try to plant fruit trees and waiting 8, 10, 12 years. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. Okay, now to prove that I did the work and I dug this hole and I planted this tree, you can see my hands. My hands are dirty, like they say in the Army. Keep the gunpowder dry and trust in the Lord. In other words, we always want to be prepared. We want to do our part to be prepared because we hope and pray for the best, but we are prepared for the worst. If you just wait around doing nothing and waiting for the Lord to take care of you during those troubled times, it may not happen that way. So enjoy the fruit of your labor. God bless. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There'll be more videos coming about pruning and about building planter boxes, and also about composting and other such things related to how to be a little bit more self-sufficient. Rain barrels. Thank you for watching, and God bless.